The selling hasn't even started yet. And that's why we're going to talk about how the selling is most likely to amplify next week. And we're going to get into that in the first part of this video. Then we're going to bounce back over and look at some macro signals. But first off, I just wanted to not waste your time because you clicked on this video to see how that selling can amplify. And it's going to be with looking at Nvidia here. So when we look at Nvidia, yes, we are going to pull up a 2-hour chart, even though it's Saturday and we usually go over the bigger time frames. We have to talk about how important it was for this to drop back down. And something very interesting here for Nvidia, we have used this signal multiple times. If you want to find trade setups like this one that are most likely to play out to the downside, like this one here that played out to the upside, like this one here that played out to the upside, like this one here that played out to the downside, we've used it 3 times. And it's popping up again, and guess what? We got ourselves one more rigged, maybe trap move. So we're gonna pay attention to that more so on Sunday's video. But first off, I just want you to see these yellow lines. I went ahead and put it on here for you. Here are the monthly expected moves for Nvidia, and what do you notice about it? We are above it, making some 2-hour almost triple divergence at this point. So something key for Friday was seeing that 30-minute go up, right? And seeing that be able to cross back down. That tells us that come Monday, it's going to be very important. Is this some kind of cup and handle, or is this some kind of trap to then head down in the downward direction, because the 2-hour has not turned up yet? And to land below this yellow line is a 68% chance compared to a 32% chance to land outside of it. So that's something we're going to go over on Saturday a little bit deeper, but I think it is important to keep this in your mind throughout the weekend and throughout our process going through charts tomorrow. It's still going to be important to know this kind of look, because this is something we've used multiple times. This is exactly what we teach in the course when some kind of big downfall or some kind of big up thing is going to happen. Well, these are the signals that you see when something is about to fall down. So this is what we'll pay attention to. Lastly, about Nvidia, you notice this though, the daily has not crossed over. That is going to be the big signal that, hey, this is going to drop down to lower prices, most likely to retest something like 127.74 or 125. So we will get back into Nvidia in a little bit, but I wanted to give you that so you have that flowing in your brain over the weekend. You can kind of keep it and then come into Monday and say, we got to save ourselves or else this thing might be going down. But the main takeaway here is I do believe that we are forming a major top, and it could very well be right now. The signals that I'm seeing right now, as far as Nvidia goes, as far as the market goes, as far as, you know, the Dow trying to curl down and seeing if that can get a lower high, it really looks like to me, maybe we get one more 2-hour push higher, but I think we're coming to a dramatic halt very, very soon. That's right, it was on October 22nd that we said, or at least my actual opinion, you know, a lot of the time I don't give my exact opinion because I am a true believer in you have to trade like water. You have to be willing to be wrong all the time. But everything looked like to me, and with the look from Nvidia, it looked like the SPY was going to tap out as far as the 22nd. I said it might only have 24 hours left, and we start to head down. And then the next time we do this was on Friday. We said, hey, on Thursday, we actually said there's most likely a bounce coming. And then on Friday, we said, you know, that you can look at the title of our live video on Friday, and it said, hey, watch out, because this could be a good thing. If this 2-hour is able to curl up, we could go to a new all-time high, but it also could be a liquidity grab to actually head lower. So we are in a key zone. We're going to talk about this more on Sunday, but I just want to have these things in your mind over the weekend, because we are in a key zone where if we're able to still curl up that 2-hour, hey, you might have bought some time for an all-time high here again. But if this is saying anything, it's telling me liquidity grab at this moment, as we are seeing the 30-minute rotated up and the 30-minute rotated back down, and it looks just like Nvidia here with this 30-minute MACD. So I think whichever way Nvidia goes, that's the way the SPY is going to go, and Nvidia is, or the SPY and the Qs are going to go, and Nvidia is outside of a monthly expected move with those reversal signals that we pay attention to. So in order for us to land outside of there, we might have to see something crazy. Now, one thing to always keep in your mind is the bigger picture. The bigger picture being the weekly chart. The weekly chart, we're seeing that this divergence here led to something bad. But the divergence now is much more significant. You can really see that from the RSI. You see how much more significant. And by significant, we talk about this in the course as well, but significance is overall going to be, hey, is this pointing down? Is this really weak or flat? Just a little bit weak. Well, this right now turning down as of last week on that RSI, if this crosses over on the MACD, you have some extreme weakness now. You have more weakness than over here. So what if something bad ends up happening over time here? That's what we're paying attention to. The ultimate signal for you to know that you're really in a crash-like scenario here, and make sure you stick around for volatility towards the end of this video, is if this monthly does confirm. That's going to be a big deal. One thing we're going to have to take into consideration with the monthly is this thing has continued to scale up. So that does lean us towards, hey, even though this could be dramatic, it could still be some kind of pullback like the last time. So we will pay attention to those things. We will mention those things when they come to fruition. And the main thing that you need to happen first is the daily's crossed over. Now, in order for us to really say, hey, this thing can start to crash down, at least in some kind of bigger corrective move, is going to be if the weekly is able to turn down for the SPY. And something that we were mentioning as we just flip over to the Qs, let's just flip over to the Qs, because that is very, very significant. And you're almost coming up to the same point, pretty much a double top at this point. So you see how significant it is right now. You notice that we're flat, right? We talked about when we're flat. When we're flat, we're just going up in the channel. Little pullback, little pullback, little pullback, corrective moves, corrective moves. Okay, awesome. Now you see that downward direction. So if this really starts to add up and turn down here, it's going to scale up the selling. And that's why you need to be paying attention for your portfolio that is curled down on your MACD for the daily scale for the Qs. So that's what we want to be watching at this moment, is the fact that this is curling down, and that's where you do have the opportunity to curl over weekly charts. It is a time to be cautious, but we did talk about this throughout the week a lot of the time. Right now, it still looks like TLT is trying to base out in some way. Yes, it did turn down, but we always see a lot of the time you'll see a third move down just to really confirm a bottom, and then we'll see if that can base out. If we only see people rotating into bonds because it is in their best interest to do so with the yield that it is producing at this point, because we have a huge separation between the market and TLT, well, then that might not be anything too crazy. That might just be a corrective move, right? That could mean, hey, maybe we're going to correct kind of like over here, or a little bit worse. Maybe we just correct down to this area, and then we end up turning up over time. We will pay attention to signals in here. We are not a channel that is trying to just say, hey, there's going to be a crash at any moment at all time. It pretty much can happen at any moment, right? But we don't want to treat our trading like, hey, I'm trying to catch a crash at every single moment, because that's going to be very rough. You want to trade like water. You want to flip back and forth. But if things add on to that, if we start to go into geopolitical stuff starts to scale up, if something crazy happens with the election, if whatever happens adds on to that with TLT, that's where you have to be really worried. But we notice the daily scale has crossed over for the Qs. The weekly scale has gotten to a point where that is a dramatic divergence. If we're not able to exceed to a new all-time high, I think this will be in some way a major top, unless we're able to turn back up on that weekly scale, right? Get close to that center line and turn up, because that's when good things happen, okay? So what we really want to look for here is the monthly scale. The monthly scale has to turn down for us to say, okay, this is going to last a long time. We see how significant that is on the RSI, so it's a little bit more significant than last time, kind of flat on the MACD. So we always will be open to that turning up one more time, but this is starting to add up to a pivotal point, and that's why I mentioned it on October 22nd. Something key we were looking for on the daily scale for Apple was, well, pretty much for the macro side, we were saying Apple and Nvidia are holding up this market at this point. Apple and Nvidia are extremely high up, and they seem to be not able to fall very easily. And we notice Apple was able to confirm momentum is starting to turn down here for the daily scale. Now, this is on a positive bar. Okay, we were up 0.36. So a lot of the time when I see a positive bar, I want to see a negative one, all right? I want to see a negative one to really confirm like, hey, momentum is definitely turning down here. So that's what I'd be paying attention to for Apple. This could get a little bit worrisome for Apple because, one, on the daily scale, you do have a bunch of little you're very close to the center line here. So that's something very interesting to look for. The weekly scale, we do notice that that's up a little bit higher, okay? So if we wanted to buy more time, you see how a lot of these weeklies could turn back around, but I think we're at a very pivotal point right now, so I'd just be cautious out there. Volatility is starting to scale up, and it's already behaving like a bear market. Make sure to stick around for a little bit longer to look at volatility with us. One thing that I think is taking a lot of people off guard in the market is Tesla. I think this thing is ripping. It looked like that weekly scale was going to confirm down. This was some kind of double top, but you notice a strong confirmation. And the interesting part about Tesla was this is the only stock that turned up on a monthly scale last month. And you're seeing that just completely wick up and break through these highs. So on the daily scale, something for Tesla that we have to be watching here is this some kind of massive cup and handle? I mean, even if you say, hey, this is too deep down to be a handle, it made good structure, produced good earnings. If it breaks through this level, you can see a large measured move. Okay, so we'll pay attention to that for you. We saw the divergence here. We knew weakness would come, but we just thought, hey, maybe that'll turn up and be some kind of handle. And it looks like that might actually be happening just very deep. So great reaction from Tesla. Something interesting here will be to see if this is going to play out over time, right? The monthly is crossing up, suggesting this is a decent hold for 12 to 24 months. And that will be very interesting if the market is going down, but Tesla sees some upside. Now, something interesting to think about with Tesla is the fact that Twitter is a lot of what people are using right now for news, right? People don't necessarily trust the legacy media anymore. They're using Twitter, and Twitter is known for free speech. And that is something that Donald Trump is really for. So not only are we seeing DJT pop, like pretty much as the election really starts to, voting starts, actually, it happened a little bit before that, but it could be an inclination that people are trying to invest in things that they see as potentially good for a Trump presidency. And I think that might be a big reason people are really liking Tesla in this area. So that will be interesting to see what happens with this. Obviously, if that daily scale rotates back down, if we start to see crash signals here, we will inform you about that. Amazon, one thing we were looking for was the daily scale to turn up, right? We mentioned that a few days ago, just saying, hey, this is a low here. Let's see if it can curl back up to curl up that daily chart. That did not end up happening. So one thing that is very interesting with Amazon is the fact that this had a very significant divergence. And I want you to see the drop of Amazon kind of compared to a lot of other things, right? A lot of other things just corrected about 7%. This corrected down to almost 25%. And you notice that is a lot of the reason is because the momentum was so dead here. You notice that we have a very significant divergence on the MACD, very significant on the RSI. And this is why you really want to pay attention to the market right now, because we have very significant divergences forming right now. So what is happening here? Well, the weekly turned up, suggesting, hey, more upside, but when this starts to go down like this and you look at the daily scale, you start to think of, hey, this could be a lower high in some way. You notice that we did not really create the structure to head down when we hit this point. So when we went below that, now we're getting that snap back to almost get that structure now. So I would be really careful if this weekly chart starts to roll over. You can start to break through some trend lines. You most likely will take out this low and go make a new one. So be very cautious with Amazon. As we pull up a monthly scale, this is going to be interesting because what else does Amazon show that's kind of different from the market? Well, it shows a more significant divergence at the same time, the MACD at the same time, the RSI, right? We can see that very high point up here and boom, to the downside. So if this monthly crosses over, why is Amazon going to go through so much turmoil? And the only reason I can really think of for Amazon to go through so much bad price action, if this monthly were to cross, I think that does happen. The reason that I can come up with is maybe the consumer is going to struggle here, right? The consumer is not necessarily going to be buying those type of products, or it's something to do with if Trump gets in and the tariffs. So we'll pay attention to this, but the main signal to look for here from Amazon is if it curls down on a monthly chart, and a lower high is very likely for this one right now. So the first thing we can pay attention to is, does Amazon get weakness on the weekly scale? Now it's time for Nvidia, and we still have those monthly moves, and so you can see it on the monthly scale. We are way outside of it as of right now. You're a few percent outside of it as of right. I think it's like almost 5% out of it right now. So if that wanted to pull down, you'd at least see about a 5% drop, right? You would see at least a 5% drop maybe to get back into this zone. And so that's what I'd really be paying attention to going on into next week, maybe 3 to 5%, seeing if by the end of the month we can turn down. The bad reason for that, and one thing is to note, the monthly is different here, and we want to treat it as different. If this crosses down and crosses back into positive, up into positive territory, that is a good sign, right? That's a good sign. Look at the last time that did happen. Remember back here, all the media was telling you, hey, Nvidia's terrible. This thing is crashing down. This thing's awful. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi is buying huge numbers down in here, and boom, we get this cross up and positivity. So one thing is Tesla going to do that, first of all? But second of all, do we see that look right now? Is Nvidia a good investment? No, it is not. It just isn't. Your MACD is telling you that. I'm not telling you that. Your indicators are telling you that, right? So we want to look for points of weakness. What do we see here on the MACD? What do we see here on the RSI? Well, the first time we did have that divergence, ooh, we have that a little bit significant there on the RSI, big drop, right? And then now you have it significant on the MACD and more significant on the RSI. If you do turn down from here and cross over on this weekly scale, you are pretty damn close to that center line. So this is the real thing that is starting to look like, hey, if Nvidia does fall, the entire market will fall. And that's where you really have to be worried about the entire market, because Nvidia is such a big stock. Okay, so this is going to be something very important, but what is going to cause this to turn down on a greater scale? Because if it's just people repositioning into bonds, then they see stocks at a nice price, they might hop back over into stocks. But as of right now, we just want to pay attention to the fact that, hey, there is weakness here. Whatever reason this turns down, I want to treat it very, very seriously, because that can be an extended move down over time. One thing that's starting to click in my brain is, well, everything else is weak except for Nvidia. So that's why I was really stating last week how Nvidia and Apple are really keeping up this market. And if AMD turns down on a weekly scale, you can see it's already right there. It's negative already if that just turns down. So that could get a little ugly. Maybe we get a test of the 200 on the weekly scale. When you look at the monthly, though, AMD should be one of the ones on your radar, because this one actually has confirmed dramatic monthly divergence, very little bit down here for the MACD, but really down for the RSI. So we have to pay attention to this, because we're already seeing dramatic downside, and now we're starting to cross over. So this could just be some kind of move like this to then get your next drop. That's why I would pay very close attention to AMD. But something to read into is, if all these other semiconductors are kind of, struggling a little bit, there's only like two that are really doing well still, one of them being Nvidia, well, then Nvidia is holding up the entire market. It does add up to the fact that, hey, we could see some kind of absolute boom. I'm sure there's some people out there talking about, hey, if we actually get more participation from stocks like AMD, we can see crazy upside, go way past 600 for the SPY, see some crazy stuff for IWM, which I think Tom Lee is saying. But at the same time, we have to realize we're getting a major signal here. I know the month isn't over, but next week it looks like we could pile on some selling. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. But if this remains crossed, that is suggesting that AMD has a major weakness here. And that is something you really want to pay attention to, as Nvidia is still at all-time highs and hasn't experienced any kind of turmoil just yet. Meta up in here look like, hey, this could be some kind of top. We make that next move higher, and that's why you got to pay attention to if weeklies are basing out, if dailies are curling back up, right? We talk about that with the management of the trade. By the way, guys, we don't have sponsors on this channel. We don't do it. We just come out, we talk about stocks with you. We try to give you useful information. If you're enjoying it, please give a like to the channel. It's completely free. But if you want to learn a lot of what we're talking about with Divergence, a lot of what we're talking about with Nvidia making that move outside of the monthly expected move, and how to really trade that, then get the course that's down in the description. It is very, very useful. You're going to learn a ton about the MACD, RSI, weekly ranges, movement, pretty much everything that you can want to learn about with charting is going to be in that course, and it's very clear cut. I try not to waste your time with useless info. Every single thing you learn in there will be useful. That is going away in November, so you only have about a month left to really get that course for only $100. You can get that for $100 if you want to learn how to swing trade. $150. They are both 90% off. We are not going back down to that price. I highly encourage you to get that if you're dedicating yourself to learning over the weekend. But how would this be bad now? So the reason that this move could actually be some kind of trap is because look how it has created a super significant divergence here for the MACD, for the RSI at the same time. That tells us, hey, yeah, we need to watch that daily, see if we rotate up again. But if this weekly does confirm well, then we could head all the way back down to 453.08. Then we can maybe get some support. People think, hey, this is going to go to a new all-time high again, and that just sets up a right shoulder, right? Left head, right shoulder, because this is a very important level that we don't want to lose. That's where we could form that consolidation. You want to see if stocks are forming some kind of consolidation by a very important level, and then you see that level broken. That's going to be a very important thing. But you can see here that if the weekly is turning down, it suggests that Meta is about to go through some pain for weeks. So if that is happening right before the election, it's kind of leading me to believe maybe something more than just a rebalancing to TLT will happen here. We don't want to think or make trades on that and say, yes, that is going to happen. We want to see, hey, let's just take a good signal. If this weekly crosses down, it suggests weakness. So then I might want to take that signal, and then I might want to say, okay, but if that turns up on a daily scale, I need to be open to this going higher. That has saved us so many times. And we teach you that kind of style in the course, managing trades, right? Actively managing trades. Yes, stop losses are useful, but sometimes they just use that data to screw you over. So we talk about how to not get screwed in the course. If this weekly turns down, that's not a good sign. One thing like Nvidia that's different about Meta is this is not necessarily giving divergence at the same time on the MACD and RSI. So even if we do, and you see the weakness that came in the last time this crossed over. So the weakness that can come in again, if that monthly does cross, is pretty steep here for Meta. You saw the dramatic weakness, saw the dramatic buying back up. So if this does cross down, watch out, because that could end up all the way towards 213 over a few years. All right, this doesn't mean any of this has to happen, but it does mean, hey, we're looking out for a fantastic opportunity where we can benefit from it for years on end. And that's what we're really paying attention to here. But notice that the MACD does not have the best divergences here, kind of flat, just a little bit up there actually for the RSI, nothing on your MACD, and then you have a little bit down here for the RSI in the recent months. So this is going to be key to pay attention to going forward. Meta still could buy us some more time, but I just want you to see how Meta has gone through dramatic downside when that monthly crosses. So watch out if that happens right here, and the weekly is suggesting that if it were to cross over next week. We're not going to dive too far into this. We always say on Friday, hey, great breakout, right? But every single live video on Friday, we say, just watch out. They don't want this to close at higher prices on a Friday, right? They want that options expiration. So they always mess with it by Friday. So the more the time you want to pay attention to if AMC is going to have a big moment is, one, if it happens on a Monday, and two, if it can break through a key level. We are going to update this key level for you. These Bollinger Bands are pretty tight, and GameStop is actually giving some good signals here. Now that did turn down on Friday, so we'll have to pay attention to this going forward, seeing if there is more time to go down in this. But I want you to see how the price action is getting very, very tight, and a big explosive move can come in either direction. So if you want to see something good here, that daily chart does have to cross up. It would be confirming another, I would say, point of divergence. You pretty much have the divergence down here for a double bottom. So if that can curl up, that's going to be a key thing. And if it can break through the key level that we are going to update you for on Sunday, okay? So make sure you're subscribed so you can come back for Sunday's video, because this is a big signal, and this could mean that people were right about GME, and this thing is about to see something absolutely crazy. Right before we get into volatility, I just wanted to talk about the dollar, because the dollar is still in a monthly positive trend. So I don't even think the first round of selling has fully hit the tape yet. And if this monthly does cross up, that can be a bad sign. And we already know people are flying to cash faster than we've seen in a long time, right? We keep saying this move took about 6 weeks. This move took about 4 weeks. So we are rapidly going to cash. And why is that happening right now? Why is that happening at the same time as Nvidia giving topping out signals outside of a monthly expected move towards the end of October? Why are we seeing all these weekly divergences pop up as the dollar is starting to scale up dramatically? And the other question is, why is the selling not hitting the tape? Okay, so this looks like some kind of big trap. That's what it looks like. We talked about 2-hour traps, 30-minute traps, daily traps, and we said they can happen on the weekly scale, and you are experiencing that right now. I do believe this is a weekly trap, and when this does end, we're at least going to get some kind of sudden move down. And I think that could start as soon as next week. I think we actually maybe do see some dramatic downside, but I need to see the reason for that to really see, is that going to be a prolonged move down? Okay. But we did say on October 22nd, I'm like, hey, I think the market's done here. That was my opinion. Obviously, I'm always open to being wrong and I'll pay attention to that. But for the most part, the weekly is turning up for the dollar and the monthly scale is about to turn up and it's in a positive trend. Why are people about to fly into cash and get the hell out of stocks? That's what it looks like to me. Well, volatility is suggesting that we're right to look at that. Now, from the daily perspective, we're going to go into the shorter time frames on Sunday for this. But from the daily perspective, we were looking for, does this create a reversal signal? Do we see like a tiny little squeeze in here? Are we able to give up the 50 in some way? Because maybe we go down to the 200 and we buy ourselves some time. We get a massive reaction on Friday. So we were right to put in the title of our live video and say, is this a liquidity grab? Because the Dow wasn't matching up to it. The IWM wasn't really matching up to it. And those things were already experiencing something crazy. IWM at least tested something, but the Dow really didn't. It just stayed weak, and that is interesting. We saw a little bounce with those 15-minute signals, so it was weird to me on Friday that the Dow actually gave reversal signals and did not see the upside, but the SPY and the Qs did. It made me believe something is fishy here. And so you heard me live say, yeah, I sold out of my volatility position when we called that bounce for Friday. On Thursday, we called that bounce. And then I said, okay, I'm going to get out of my volatility position, see if that goes down to a lower price. But for some reason, I was just sitting there going, this looks like a liquidity grab. So I did repurchase that position, and I'm already up 65% on that position, and we haven't even crossed up. So the main signal that you want to pay attention to here is actually when volatility crosses up on the daily scale. Now, we're going to go into the shorter time frames on this, but the daily scale is very important here. That weekly is starting to whip back around, and you are in bear market behavior. You are in crash behavior because that 50 is above the 200 and you're remaining above the 200. So this again is another signal that suggests that something bigger than a repositioning into bonds is going to happen here. We kind of hope that doesn't happen, right? We don't hope for people to lose jobs. We don't hope for bad things to happen to people's portfolios. We hope that things are okay. Maybe we go through some kind of corrective move. Maybe we're able to pull down and reprice in this market. But for the most part, this looks like volatility is going to come back in a dramatic way. And you're getting a confirmation, a very strong confirmation above 20 without crossing up this MACD, but the RSI is above the center line. The price action is above all of the moving averages, and you do have the crash signal flashing red, and it has remained there for a long time while the market hits all-time highs, and that is very, very fishy. When you do hit all-time highs again, what usually happens? This right here. We're not seeing that. So someone out there knows that something bad is coming is what this really tells me, because this measures puts and calls about a month out. That's what this is a measurement of. And so if this daily does cross up, that can be a very, very worrisome signal. And this is why I believe we could go into a bear market, if not some kind of sudden crash. And this is why I'm really hoping that some people take the advice over the weekend to get that course so you can learn how to trade in a bear market. My strategy is the absolute best in a bear market. You can use it when volatility is below 20, but we always talk about if it's above 20, then you get the bigger swings. That is when you can really start to benefit from that course. You can really start to use those weekly ranges. And so you have to understand how to use all these things. So I encourage you to get that course over the weekend. You only have 30 days left to get it until that price goes up, and it might be increasing by 200%. Okay, so it is a time where it is a great discount. I believe it is very helpful. Other people have emailed me, other people talk about it in the live channel all the time. If you have questions about it, please come back for Monday's live stream and ask me about it, ask the people in chat about it and how it has helped them. So I think it's going to be important during the main takeaway here that we talk about Nvidia. Nvidia, is it going to drop back down into its monthly expected move? Because we've seen that signal play out 3 out of 3 times over the last few months, and now we're seeing it again towards the end of October, and that would suggest that you only have a few days to get back into that move if that's going to happen. And we're also seeing 2-hour signals that are proving that. So this is something we're going to be watching very closely on Sunday. If you need the weekly and monthly expected moves, as we're about to get new monthly expected moves for November, the Patreon is down in the description. We did post these trade setups to Patreon, so we do post some setups there. So I highly encourage you to get that as well, because once you do learn how to do this stuff, it's good to maybe see what someone who has done it for a long time is paying attention to. And this is something I was paying close close attention to at this moment. So thank you guys for watching. I really do appreciate it. I would be very, very cautious and be paying attention to news over the next few days. It does look like something may happen next week that could turn things up for the worst. And that's something you really have to be aware of. We hope that nothing does happen. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for liking, subscribing, taking the course, joining the Patreon. You guys are fantastic about all that stuff, and I really appreciate it. Your guys' support is what keeps me going and making these kinds of videos, and I just hope to continue to be helpful. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Make sure to do something fun and don't stare at charts all weekend, but join us back for Sunday, and we'll go through those shorter time frames, get you the weekly expected moves for the SPY and the Qs. All right. Peace out, homies. Bye.